Hello, I'm Tan the Tambio TC channel. Uh, don't worry, I'll be getting to get different gameplay. I have Red Dead 2 downloaded now, and I need to do more of Assassin's Creed at some point and such. I do have other things I'm gonna do, of course, like I want to do the Fortnite, there's the OG stuff, and more like voice characters. Of course, I've talked about doing read-alongs and such. I've been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Replaying Cyberpunk is one of them, and that's part of the thing I'm going into with this video. And I want to tell you right at the beginning of this video, and this goes for all my other videos, if you like Cyberpunk or you love Cyberpunk or whatever you think about Cyberpunk, don't let me change your opinion. Don't you make the choice for yourself. I mean, that's all about what it's supposed to be all about, is making choices, and you make that choice for yourself. I'm just one perspective of many. Whoops, got some stuff popping up on my screen. But yeah, keep that in mind. There are subjective things, like if it does come to an objective thing I have to talk about, then that will be that will depend um, on the subject matter, of course. But the only other thing I gotta say is you can share your criticism or your opinion or stuff. I've had people be rude with their opinions, and you can do your opinions without having to be nasty. There are many ways you can word your opinion without being nasty. It's unnecessary, it's uncalled for, as well as there are people who have an ego and go waving around their dicks at you. And I've also had that, sadly. And you can do and talk about your opinion and your perspective without doing that stuff. I know I've been harsh to Cyberpunk, I've been harsh to different games. This isn't really much different, except that it's gone beyond. The reason I do this, though, particularly to Cyberpunk, is because of a lot of the manipulation, whether it be by some fans, not all fans of Cyberpunk, but some, and as well as the company CD Projekt Red. I mean, this company originally came out, and I think both Yang Yi and Angry Joe covered this back in the day, where they had a message basically blaming both the consumers and their fans for the original state of the game back 3 years ago. And yeah, that was a very jerk response. And not only that, before they even got most of these patches and stuff, they were already boasting about their game, and on several occasions. And by the way, they did that whole stunt with blaming us as they had trailers for Phantom Liberty before it was even released. They did that. They clearly don't care about you. um, and I just have various problems of my own. I think the manipulation bullcrap is just gone far, and Cyberpunk is sadly, in my opinion, one of the worst offenders when it comes to a lot of the manipulation and stuff going on. And I'm kind of treating it as I'm fighting back against that stuff while showing a lot of what I genuinely have concerns and problems about with Cyberpunk. I've seen many different perspectives. I've been looking more into Cyberpunk, and I want to talk about some of that today. And one of them is actually about like taking stealth versus guns a-blazing in each mission of the game. So you do have some options, like Corpo. There's a mission where you can literally talk a guard out, and you can kind of do the mission just kind of walking through the area casually, and people not really minding you all that much. You can skip entire boss sections. If you go guns a-blazing, there will be certain enemies that they put in different levels later, like different enemies and stuff. And it's so I like that they have those changes. There are different dialogue reflected. I think there's extra car chases potentially, depending on whether you go guns a-blazing or whatever. But yeah, what is that ding? I think that's a phone. But I have problems even with this part, and this would be the strongest part if it wasn't for a couple of things. First off, I want to say for all the stuff people have given, like Bethesda games, and I do think they deserve it to an extent because, like, we want to push back against some of the greedy or disgusting things these companies do. But I don't think CD Projekt Red with this whole situation is uh, totally avoidance of the same things. Lights like going dim. Should probably do this somewhere else if that actually goes out. I don't think it will, but just in case. I don't think they're in avoidance of a lot of that stuff. They still have there's like, I actually think that while you have those walking sequences and such, and they are slow in like Bethesda games where you have to follow someone, there's still a lot of that in Cyberpunk. And I actually think it's slightly worse because it kind of, like, if you try to get ahead of the NPC, it kind of forcefully forces you to go slower, even. And even though they're not very long walking segments, there are a lot of them. And then, even though you can skip at least one or two or whatever of some of the sections, I always hate the obvious, like, being driven by the NPC and having them spout exposition to you. And I, even though I appreciate that they have the like being able to skip stuff like the rides you take and cutscenes, but it just kind of makes me think that then adding another question, I don't feel CD Projekt Red was very confident in their dialogue and story because they have those options. So it just brings up another question. And while there are perks and stuff and other skills to help towards stealth, like going invisible, freaking, you of course have like throwing weapons, like throwing knives and stuff you can get from a distance, silenced weapons, all that kind of stuff you can do. And also weapons that are supposed to knock out people, even though for the way the missions are kind of scripted. Once again, scripting is one of the biggest downfalls even to this because everything is within the limit of the script and the direction they want you to go still, as well as those sucky ass endings that you get in the main game. Even if you buy the $70 with the $30 DLC Phantom Liberty, you're still paying at least $40 of that towards the main game, and it's been a long time before there were any like times that it was on sale and such, as well as the game being in a more playable state. And it's still technically not in a playable enough state on the older consoles, and there are still people who don't give a crap about upgrading. So you gotta keep stuff like that in mind. There are people who still play PlayStation 3 online and such. So I've been watching some interesting videos on going into the online of older PS3 or Xbox 360 and such games and seeing the online series, like how many people are actually playing on like Call of Duty games or Battlefield games or any kind of game that's on there. Anyways, so other than the scripting, it's kind, you know how people complain about the dialogue in Fallout 4, and I think it is really awful in Fallout 4. It's kind, as well as I hate Mass Effect Andromeda. It's funny how, like, even though there are some times where there are four yellow options, it kind of does that baby thing where it's like shows you, okay, the blue options are just questions, they don't actually progress the story or the conversation further so that you can get out of the goddamn cutscenes finally. You have to click the yellow ones no matter what to be able to go forward because you're not moving anywhere. You're just either asking questions and stuff, which is nothing new. We've seen it in so many games. Matter of fact, a lot of stuff in this game. And because of I think there are two elements that kind of ruin stealth for me a little bit, and there are other games that have these too. But one is your little map up in the corner, upper right corner, I think. It shows you the direction most of the enemies are facing, so you can use that, as well as like being able to see through walls and stuff, which every game has that now. You know, Eagle Vision and Assassin's Creed, the vision that Batman has and stuff, like X-ray or whatever. Not like Superman, but you know what I mean. But yeah, there games like Splinter Cell gave you. I love Splinter Cell, and games like Splinter Cell gave you these like different goggle settings and stuff, and at least they made limits to balance out the seeing through walls. So even if you could mark somebody through the walls and stuff, if you started moving, say in Conviction, the screen would go all fuzzy and all over the place. Or in certain levels or enemies that would cause your tech to go crazy, so you had to eliminate those enemies and stuff. There were obstacles even for that. I don't think there are for Cyberpunk, as well as like hacking stuff to cause distractions. That's nothing new either. Like there's so many the games like Splinter Cell has given you various gadgets as well as ways to distract an enemy from you. So it's not really something that's new, but I appreciate that it's there. I think the best thing about Cyberpunk, if I had to say one big positive, other than Panam's hot. But honestly, I love the Mass Effect characters not just because they're hot, but they have great personalities and they're just such relatable, interesting characters. I just don't feel that where there's just take Judy for example. A lot of people always bring up Judy, and when I'm playing through her story, it's a lot of complaining, sob story stuff, or like every other character exposition from time to time, and just a lot of talk about Evelyn, and you don't really get enough to know about Evelyn though, or to care about her. And Judy's just like, yeah, that's the other thing is like the romance. There's not many partners to romance in the game compared to other games you have, as well as they do restrict you unless you use exploits of some sort to be able to actually get together with a character, which is also a thing Mass Effect Andromeda did, where it restricted certain characters to being, say, lesbian or gay or straight or whatever, multiple. But this one was a little bit like one-sided with some of the characters, and then others were similar to what Mass Effect Andromeda did. And funny enough, Bethesda games have aged well because anybody can get married, and I love that. I was talking about that one joke, I think, in a previous video where they were showing the Stormcloak and the Imperial's sides and what they like and dislike, or what they would allow or not allow. And when they got to the point where it's like, what is your perspective on gay marriage? And they were both chill with it. And I always laugh at that. I always found that funny. And yeah, you just have a lot of variety of options in other games, even if they don't always have a lot of character to them or development. It's still cool that the options are there and that there's so many of them too. And even though I know Cyberpunk's meant to be a different type of game, it still feels like it wants to be like Bethesda RPGs and stuff, but at the same time, it also wants to be a Naughty Dog game, but it doesn't have what makes a Naughty Dog game all that amazing or spectacular or work so well, unless it's Last of Us Part 2, which that game does do some things sadly better. Like its villains in particular actually stand out, even if they are awful. You at least remember them. I don't remember crap about Arasaka because they don't really show their tyranny. You have two people technically, or other characters working for Arasaka that actually help you out, and you kind of look like the psychopath because you're going in, killing their people, and doing all this stuff. So it just kind of makes you question: is this really a great villain when you're the one looking like a villain? Unless that's the whole point of their message, which I don't think it is. Then if that's the case, it's ruined in a similar vein to the message Last of Us Part 2 did, where Last of Us was like, oh, violence is bad, but and your character sometimes shows remorse towards violence, but you clearly just killed a million people with no remorse on your adventure to stop the main villain in that game. So it just looks kind of hypocritical and stupid. Um, so besides that stuff, this game really needs third person too. I actually would have loved to see co-op, and I do think Cyberpunk could have a great sequel. Loud people. I think it could have a potential for a great sequel, and I have to say, there have been games that I think are mid or bad that uh, have great DLC or DLC way better than the main game, but that doesn't make the main game any better just because it has better DLC. And you could technically say that Phantom Liberty is a $30, even though it does give you enough stuff and it is definitely better than the main game in many ways. It is technically a $30 paywall for the actual ending and a better ending at that, but it's still a $30 paywall. They just, and you're gonna want to play a specific way anyways. At least for me, I don't care about the characters, so I don't care about how I play it. And Keanu Reeves just kind of phones in his character. He's phoned in a lot of characters in the past, so this is almost no different from those. And I love Keanu Reeves. I love his Berserk comic books, but I have to say, he's freaking really just phoning it in. It feels like they kind of did a lot of rewrites and stuff around his character, and it's kind of obvious at times. And you have to think like the setup at the beginning of the game is supposed to set you up for everything that continues onward into the rest of the game. So you just played your best hand of cards. It's just kind of a sloppy mess afterwards, and an incoherent one at that. And when there's stuff like synth meat brought up or the corporation actually being shown doing something bad, you can only see it in certain circumstances, like picking the corpo beginning or whatever, or the, what is it, nomad beginning, where you have the iguana, but that stuff is still so brief, and it's all the good stuff is buried within all the exposition and stuff, and it gets lost, or you get so bored that you just want to skip the cutscenes and such. And yeah, it just kind of sucks. I've had a bad experience, many bad experiences personally with the game. I'm trying to play it again, see what I think. I still don't think I'm changing my mind on the game. I still have a lot of the same problems. Also, a lot of the good stuff that stuff would actually react or interact with you in a realistic way are within the restrictions and boundaries of the scripted like missions and stuff and cutscenes, and it just doesn't feel alive because it wants you to go to straight path, and at this point you know the endings suck and don't have a whole lot of weight to them. You're just kind of left not caring. You want to go guns blazing because you want to put your cool weapons and your mantis blades and all that to the test, but you get punished for wanting to have fun, and it's just like, I don't even know. But you want to do that most part because then that's what affects the open world. You know how the enemies are so spread out and far in between, and the bosses aren't very good. I kind of prefer to skip the bosses when I can. If I can sneak around them, they're not very fun. And apparently, there's some pretty bad level balancing. I was looking up some things on the. It's got that like Oblivion enemy leveling system that's kind of dumb almost. But yeah, like it just, I just can't with the freaking gameplay, because when you get outside of the boundaries of the scripted stuff, it's not like somebody's going to send bounty hunters after you. It's not like there are gang members wandering the street or robots and drones flying around. Where are flying cars? That's another ironic thing that people blame Bethesda for, is like, oh, but they always want people to mod and fix the game. When they do that same thing, except, in this case, they can't do it for console. They're only doing it for PC. So if you want flying cars, you sadly got to do it on the frickin' PC. And technically, people are modding and trying to fix Cyberpunk even further on PC. So technically, the same complaint can be brought up there. The irony of some of these things. Um, but yeah, I just found the going guns a blazing and the stealth approach is not only hindered by the fact that it's kind of easy, you have things that help you out. Unless on harder difficulties, it is genuinely hard, but then it's kind of more aggravating, annoying hard, and it doesn't always feel all that fair or balanced. And then you have, of course, the mini map thing where you can see where enemies are facing. You got the being able to see through walls, and depending on whatever other perks and skills you level up, it just gets better. You're supposed to feel more powerful as you level up and stuff. I never truly felt like I was more powerful, but I felt like I was at least somewhat more confident in certain situations. The AI was never smart. I never. With games like Halo and stuff, they really designed their enemies and their enemy types in a very specific way that they and have the element of like the 5 second fun each time method or philosophy. I just don't feel like that's entirely there, even when you have other enemies put into a level. It's just kind of similar dudes with different types of guns and stuff we've all seen before. It just doesn't feel like it has enough variety to care. And then outside the boundaries of the scripted stuff and missions, enemies are so far in between, and you have to provoke them. You know that most of the people you see in the world are either civilians who will mostly, if you point your gun at them and you have to aim down the sights mostly at them, they will only run away, where before they crouched and did their fetal position thing, kind of like the Witcher animation when you're like swinging your sword around or something. And yeah, it was just kind of silly. And then there's police and such, and they're not hard to get away from. I actually think Watch Dogs and not Call of Duty. What am I thinking? Freaking GTA has like way better police systems than that, as well as the police give me a way more difficult time. Like when you got those like 5-star dudes flying in, it's cool to look at, but in reality, you can outrun those guys. That ship's coming down really slowly. It's like, all right, we're coming in. All right, get those doors slid up in. All right, he's already halfway across the city. We should have just flew over the frick. It's just really slow. It's not entirely getting to you fast enough. But yeah, it's just like, and how much fun factor are you gonna get from messing with the police? It's gonna probably fade away faster than when you mess with the police in other games. This is all stuff they should have had fixed in the first place, and even before they had the games fixed, they were signing off on stuff like the anime and all that, and all sorts of merchandising. It's like this game's not in a good state. If you want a game based on a tabletop that are genuinely good, just any Dungeons and Dragons game, well, a good amount like the Baldur's Gate games. Um, I guess Neverwinter, of course. It was weird, the Neverwinter games, like especially BioWare. Um, what is going on with that light? It's like going dimming and then brightening up and stuff. And Vampire the Masquerade. I think those are much more respectful. They understand their IP and the setting better, like in a horror movie right now. Much better than what Cyberpunk, where Cyberpunk's too focused on the punk part and it's kind of made it the norm in the game. And there are things where it's just like ugly for the sake of ugly, like stupid symmetrical lights on the tail lights on a car or whatever. Just like it's just ugly for the sake of ugly. It looks like the city looks cool and stuff, but the actual feeling of the city, actually traveling around the city, it's just not fun to navigate. I understand why there are cars, other than the fact there needs to be cars, but where are the flying cars still? Like, we're not going to get that on console. Man, I am in a horror movie. I just never found that stuff had the weight, and I guess that's what people are talking about when they say, and you wouldn't realize this stuff is there, especially if you play a specific way, and that there are probably most people who aren't going to always create that many characters or want to just play one way, or they discover one way is better than the others. I mean, you could argue that same fact with other games, but I feel like they do give you usually other things that you're more interested in or want to see the perspective. But yeah, I don't know, as well as like whatever else things. Like when it comes to even Fallout, like uh, there was a guy who said Fallout 4 was a game that Cyberpunk would have a bad time competing with. I actually think Fallout 4 is kind of weak compared, but I do still really like Fallout 4, and there are things that it does do somewhat impressive. Like if you join a certain faction, like say I join the Brotherhood of Steel, you can see Brotherhood of Steel patrolling the place. There will be entire companions and other characters that are dead for good, as well as their quests and such. Um, there'll be even Brotherhood of Steel, other than patrolling like the entirety of the world, you'll also see some of them within Diamond City and such, as well as if you keep Dance alive, which could potentially be dead for good too, and you have them as a partner, they will hate you. So, as well as the quest rewards and other interactions, like when the frickin' Institute are still hunting you down, attacking you occasionally, or maybe the Railroad or something, where that wouldn't have been like that before, especially if you join them, or the Minutemen, any of that kind of stuff. There's like things going on in the world, or bounty hunters sent after you, like in Skyrim. Like there will be bounty hunters sent after you in that game if you do something they don't like, and they put a bounty on your head, or even assassins like the freaking Dark Brotherhood, or thieves wanting to rob you, and you have different options. They can either believe you and not take your coin, or maybe if you're part of the Thieves Guild, they'll be like, "Oh, nice to see you, brother," and stuff like that. And there are different interactions that happen outside the boundaries of the main story and stuff, as well as you can leave most conversations whenever you want and move around and stuff. So it gives you a little bit more freedom. You do have that occasionally in Cyberpunk, but for a lot of it, you are strict to a lot of things and to the script that it wants you to play. Witcher has a lot of this stuff, but Witcher at least has a lot of life going on outside, and I find a lot of the stuff it has going for it a lot stronger. And I actually prefer walking the entirety of going from one place to another on foot sometimes even, where I don't like going on foot in Cyberpunk. It kind of makes sense that we would have the same exact complaints if we didn't have cars of Cyberpunk that we were making complaints about something like Starfield and such. Though in some of Starfield's case, at least, it did somewhat make sense, as well as the whole loading screen thing. I remember L321 talking about how having a really good SSD card helps to eliminate most of those loading screens or to shorten them. And that's not to say that there aren't loading screens that don't come with Cyberpunk, like in between cutscenes and going back to the gameplay real world and such. So, yeah, I just feel like because of previously talked about things, it kind of just dampens the experience for me. And because the world's so hollow and empty, it's obvious where a lot of the lore pickup things, like the little chips you can find that have the obvious symbol over them, or going on a computer and stuff, they don't have like the kind of story, like world storytelling that like a Bethesda or a Dark Souls game even has, where it uses the world to tell its story and lore, and in the environmental storytelling and such. Like it's, and I have to say the one best thing, if I had to say one really good thing, I don't know if I've said it before, but I do love the music in Cyberpunk, but I'm more likely to either listen to music that I genuinely love off on my own time, or other video game soundtracks outside of it. So Cyberpunk just doesn't do much for me personally, so I don't know. And I fight against the manipulation, even if it means I'm kind of talking down about Cyberpunk. These are just my perspectives. You have whatever opinion and perspective you have at the end of the day. These are just the things I have to say. And I feel like a lot of the manipulation and stupid drama and all that kind of crap. And a lot of games have that stuff, but I felt particularly Cyberpunk is one of the most manipulative. I mean, they have a freaking ad. I even see this when I was doing Morrowind. I was replaying Morrowind. I beat the story recently. I would love to talk about it. I'm doing the expansion stuff, Tribunal and Blood Moon, I think it's called. And I'm doing those. And as I'm looking wiki stuff up to kind of help me guide somewhere, because I do get lost occasionally, I kept seeing the ad oh, Cyberpunk's fixed now. Can you believe it? And my friend told me there's an Idris Elba ad where he genuinely comes out and he's like, "Hey, the game's fixed now." This big time actor that's probably got better things to do, to better places to be, where he could be making more money, is just like, "Hey, I'm saying this for Cyberpunk, for on behalf of CD Projekt Red. The game's fixed now." Such cringe. Like, what the hell is that crap? The fact that they even have to do stuff like that is so cringy and just shows the manipulation. I mean, it is an ad after all, so ads are kind of built on manipulating people sometimes and making them want to buy stuff. So, yeah, there's no doubt there. But yeah, like I think there are ads that do a great job though too and can be humorous and such. I don't think this is that particular situation. I think this is really cringy and stupid. And sadly there's been a lot of manipulation. It also kind of has that halo problem where it's like sometimes like take for example, what's his freaking name? Frick is the big armored guy. I've said his name in previous videos before. See how memorable for me, at least, these characters are. Adam Smasher, that's his name. The freaking guy getting most of the lore, other than maybe some chips and stuff talking about him or character. Like that's the other thing. Like I've talked about this, I think, in my previous video. Most people are talking about either Johnny Silverhand or Arasaka. There's a lot of talk and tell, not a whole lot of show. And you don't see much about Adam Smasher. You even have a choice to kill him or not or whatever. And I just don't care about the character. And it's kind of like, oh, you need to watch the anime or read the comic books or something to know more. And Adam Smasher is in the anime, though very briefly. But it's kind of like they do that Halo thing where it's like they expect you to read the books or watch their animation or whatever to know more. And it's like, I shouldn't have to watch your show or whatever to want to get this. It's cool that you have it for extra stuff, but for a character that's supposed to be your ending and beginning obstacle that was showed in a couple of parts, even though there's not